Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to England once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel a good number of times before. But that said, it's been about 2.25 years since I last did a dedicated review to one of this brewery's beers, and to be honest, I am not sure how I managed to let that happen. I used to drink a lot of beers from this brewery when I was doing my teacher diploma in Durham, yeah, I think maybe the main reason would be that I've done 3 or 4 collaboration reviews that involve this brewery, so perhaps that's the reason. But yeah, it was September 2018 that I last reviewed something from these guys, so far too long a gap actually. But for this review we are going to return to Newcastle in the northeast of England, and we're having a look at another beer from Wylam Brewery, and I think this is my 15th or so review involving these guys. But this particular beer is called Tales of Magic Puck. It comes in at 11% ABV, and this one is a triple IPA. I'm guessing it will probably be a hazy New England style IPA, this one, but you know, Wylam can throw up a few surprises, so I'm sure we'll figure it out when we open up the can. But definitely nice to have these guys on the channel once again, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer. This is another beer that I bought from the House of Trembling Madness down in York. An awesome beer shop if you can get there in person, but they've also got a great web shop as well, and the English beer tubers tell me that it is one of the most, I guess one of the best value online beer stores that you'll find in England actually. So definitely worth checking out if you are interested in tasting some English beers. Since this is a Newcastle based brewery as well, a big shout out to my friend Christoph, who runs the channel Ale Degustations. He's got a really nice channel there, very relaxed style of reviewing actually, and I do enjoy tuning into his reviews, and he seems to enjoy my ones as well. And hopefully at some stage we can go and visit the brewery's tap room and things, and it would be nice to have Christoph along and do a few collaboration reviews and stuff like that with him. So yeah, we definitely need to sort that out at some stage. But yeah, maybe later in the year I can do a little bit of an England tour. So yeah, you guys will see that hopefully around September 2020, but we'll see how it goes. We don't know how this whole COVID-19 rubbish is going to progress at the moment, but fingers crossed everything is sorted. But do make sure you check out Christoph's channel, and you'll find the link to that in the video description below. Do make sure you go and watch some of his videos and give him a subscribe and things. But yeah, as I said, very nice to have Wylam Brewery for you here on the channel once again, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer. So yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Wylam Brewery before, and you will no doubt see more added to that list in the near future. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the English beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to quite regularly these days because I am at home in the motherland of Scotland for a little while, and we also get a fairly regular supply of English beers through Systembolaget back in Sweden. Long may that continue, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Wylam Brewery. So Wylam Brewery was founded by John Boyle and Robin Layton in the small village of Wylam, hence the name, which you'll find to the north of Newcastle, and they founded the brewery back in the year 2000. But both of these guys had taken early retirement. John had been a computer engineer, and he met Rob, a former sea captain and also avid home brewer, and one day John fixed Rob's PC, which took a very long time, and apparently they agreed a payment of 5 gallons of the Weiss beer that they'd been drinking together for this computer being fixed, and so you had the birth of Wylam Brewery. But Rob was really interested in barley wines and stouts and sours and things like this, which just weren't really popular in England at the time, and both he and John wanted to see these beers reintroduced into their local pubs, or I guess we should say introduced rather than reintroduced. But they produced their first beer, which was called the Landlord's Choice, in August of 2000, and this beer became very popular through word of mouth. But Robin only remained in the company until around 2003, but he managed to build up a team of Ben Wilkinson, Christopher Lee, and Lee Hallworth, and these guys are all still part of the brewing team today. But John convinced his son to move back from Spain and take over his share of the company, and then they moved premises to Headon-on-Wall in 2006. But these days the company is also co-owned by Rob Cameron and David Stone, who are both running a nightclub in Newcastle after lengthy careers in the music industry. But the two had grown tired of this, and they decided that they wanted to move into beer, and they bought two pubs, the Bridge Tavern and the Town Walk, and these quickly became two of Wylam's biggest customers. But they approached Wylam to see about buying into the brewery, and then that was accepted, and that happened. And then later on the company progressed a little bit, and in 2016 they moved into the Palace of Arts in Exhibition Park, which was a military vehicle museum for a number of years. And it was actually scheduled for demolition before being saved by Freddie and Bruce Shepherd at one point, apparently. But this move took 2 years for them to plan, but now this building hosts a 30-barrel brew house and a smaller 15-barrel brew kit, which is used for their pilot batches and special releases and things like this. But they've also got a brewery tap room in there, which is quite nice. I have been there before, and they've got a restaurant apparently too. They do serve a little bit of food, but mainly it's a brewery tap room. But they also host concerts in there as well, actually, which is quite nice. But it's a really impressive building, and like I say, I hope that I can go there with Christoph at some stage and film a little out and about video for you there. But the current head brewer is Ben Wilkinson, who has been there for quite a long time. He's also got a background in the pub industry, and in recent times the increase of the capacity has allowed him to do a lot of these New England hazy IPAs and sour beers, which has really put the brewery on the map, actually, and it's really increased their reputation with craft drinkers. But they also do a few of their older beers, such as the Jakehead IPA, and this keeps their kind of more longer term followers happy. But these days they can produce up to 100 hectolitres of beer per day, which is about 10,000 litres, and as of January 2021, when I'm reviewing this beer for you, they've produced around 200 different kinds of beer, according to Untappd. So yeah, it is pretty impressive, actually, the amount of beers that these guys have done. But yeah, one of the really highly regarded English craft breweries these days, and yeah, they have been around for quite a while now. It's strange to think that these guys have been around for over 20 years. But I would recommend that you try the Jakehead from them, which is one of their very early beers, and also the one of the newer things. The last beer that I had from these guys that was part of the dedicated review was called Attracting Humans, and that was another one of their kind of New England hazy type IPAs. But yeah, awesome brewery, this one in my experience. And I think this is review number 15 or 16 or so involving this brewery, probably about maybe about the 8th or so dedicated review that I'm doing to the brewery here on the channel. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Wylam Brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and actually have a taste of this beer then. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. I did do a little bit of a Google and tried to find out what Majestic Puck actually was, but there was nothing really came up, to be honest with you. I genuinely have no idea what the name of this beer is a reference to, so do let me know about that in the comment section below if you do have an idea. But yeah, it's like a kind of the wallpaper, the artwork on this one is a little bit like a kind of retro wallpaper almost, but it looks very nice. But like I said to you at the start of the video, this one is an 11% triple IPA. It has a malt base of barley malt and wheat apparently, and the hops used in this beer are Citra, Idaho 7, Eldorado, Strata and Nelson Sauvin. So yeah, Citra we know, about 14% alpha acid, American hop, lovely mango and lots of different complexities to it. Idaho 7, another American hop, I think that's about 12-13% alpha acid as well, but you know, really soft tropical fruit notes out of that one, a lot of stone fruit as well. Eldorado's another one, quite a pungent passion fruit, but you know, a wee bit of pineapple and things too. Strata, it's a newer hop, you know, grapefruit, passion fruit, and also a little bit of a kind of strawberry note from what I remember. And then we've got Nelson Sauvin, which is the classic New Zealand hop, you know, 16% alpha acid or so, and a lovely kind of white, green, grapey sort of thing. But yeah, 11% ABV this one. This is going to be an absolute monster, so I'm glad I'm sharing it with my dad, because you know, this is a night ending beer, this, absolutely. But yeah, without further ado then, let's get this guy out. 440ml can, I think I paid, you know, it's maybe £7 for this, so that would be what, That's going to be maybe in the region of 84 Swedish kronor, something like that for those of you watching over there. That'll be maybe about €8, €8.50, and I guess about $9 American. So yeah, a few currency translations for you there. But yeah, 11% triple IPA this one. Let's get it out and into the glass. Really curious to see what this beer has in store for us. So there we go. Yeah. Oh, that looks pretty crazy, to be honest with you. Yeah, I think that'll do for the moment for a look at the aroma. There's still a little bit in there, but of course we want to leave a little bit of room for the beer to breathe, and before we taste it we'll put the rest in. But yeah, this looks very, very impressive. So as you can see with this beer, it's poured a lovely, very, very kind of bright yellow colour, this one. I would describe this as I always do, I like to describe the New England IPAs in terms of reference to fruit juices and things. This one's got a lovely kind of bright yellow tint to it, a little bit like a mango juice. It's got a wee bit of a kind of pineapple juice sort of paleness to it, in fairness as well. But yeah, this one's got a lovely, very rich, bright yellow colour similar to a mango juice. There's about a half finger of a frothy, I would say, that's a cream colour head that's on this one, not a perfect white head in my opinion, but one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass. This beer is pretty damn hazy, which to be honest you would expect of a New England IPA at 11% ABV, particularly a kind of wheat forward one. There's no oats listed on the ingredient list here. And remember, when it comes to these beers, one, the colour of your beer is dependent on two things. One, the type of malts that you use, and two, the length of the boil. A triple IPA, I think, would undergo a slightly longer boil, but most New England IPAs will have a boil time. The wort will have a boil time of maybe around 70 to 90 minutes. But yeah, the longer you boil the beer, the more the sugars caramelise, and the slightly darker colour you get, but that is also dependent on the type of malts that you use in the first place. And the level of haziness that you get in these beers is dependent on the wheat content and the oat content. And theoretically speaking, as you go up the alcohol scale, you'll get more wheat and oats in the beer, and thus you'll get a higher haziness. But it's not always the case. I have had triple IPAs from, you know, Russia and various places like this that haven't been anywhere near as hazy as this one. And I would say this one does have a little bit of the soupy gloopy kind of thing going on with it, but it's certainly not the soupiest and gloopiest of New England IPAs that I've come across, in spite of it being 11% ABV. But with regards to the style that it is, the appearance of this one is not surprising. If I stick my fingers behind the beer, you can see there is an impressive degree of haze to this one. But yeah, if you shine the light through it, you can see it's not the soupiest and gloopiest you're going to come across, but it does have an impressive level of haze to it. So yeah, interesting stuff. But yeah, nothing overly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance when you consider what style it is. So yeah, let's have a closer look at the aroma of this one and see how we get on. Very, very curious to see what this beer has in store for us. Ooh, yeah. Straight away with this beer. Lovely kind of big juicy fruitiness coming out of it. You can smell the booziness in this beer right away, but at 11% that's not surprising. But yeah, where to start with this one? For me, you can get a good little bit of the wheaty bitiness out of this one, but this for me, you can smell the thickness in it right away, and it is a very wheat orientated New England IPA. For me, there's a few directions you can take in New England IPA: wheatiness, oatiness, barley malt, rye, or yeastiness. This one is all about the wheat. It reminds me of the Blizzard in a beer mug actually that I had from Toul in Denmark quite recently. You can get some of the same sort of wheaty notes out of this beer, which is really interesting. Apparently it was saying on the Untappd thing when I checked it out earlier, it said that this is the third triple IPA that they've produced in 2020. But it smells, this is a very, very wheat orientated beer. You get a lot, if you take the aroma in quite deeply, you get a lot of that wheaty bitiness out of it. You can smell that very, very thick, just that big, thick, wheaty, white bready sort of thing out of it. You do get a little bit of the softer kind of white bready character in this beer as well, and you get a little bit of a kind of Werther's Original sort of butter candy thing out of the malt base in this one too. And when it's not got oats in it, to be fair, you would expect a little bit of that out of this beer. But it smells like an absolute monster on the malty side of things. But again, it's 11%. You would expect the malt to have a fair presence in the aroma of the beer. But yeah, a lot of wheat out of this one. A bit of the kind of bitiness, as I said, but a big thickness to it. Some softer white bready notes in there. A little bit of bread crust as well, in fairness. And then you've got a wee bit, you do have a little bit of a, how would you say, you do have a little bit of a kind of butter candy sort of thing out of the beer too. But yeah, it's a nice smelling malt base, this one. I'm curious to see how that translates into the flavour, and to see whether that big wheatiness does shine through, to be honest. But let's focus on the hoppy side of things. That's where we should be focusing with these triple IPAs. But yeah, on that the green side of things, there's definitely a little touch of earthiness out of this one, but a nice big floral aromaticity, and it's almost a little bit pine resinous as well. You can smell a little bit of that deeper kind of resiny quality to this one, but you get a little bit more of the kind of spicy floral aromaticity. All of these hops in here, of course, are 10 plus alpha acid. I'm not sure which one would be the lowest of the alpha acid in here. Perhaps the El Dorado, actually. I think El Dorado's about 11%. But all of them are high alpha acid, so not surprising that you're getting a big spicy note out of the beer. The grassiness in this beer for me does have a little bit of the grassiness does have a little bit of zestiness to it as well, but it does offer a slightly softer component to the aroma as well. But yeah, big floral beer, this one. Good bit of pine resin underneath. I wouldn't describe the floral character as being, you know, more I wouldn't describe the floral character as being more kind of spicy or anything like that. It's just really got quite a pungent floral aromaticity to it, and a little bit of pine resin kind of underneath. I don't think it's madly spicy, but there is a wee bit of that in there, like I said. But yeah, the green component of the beer for me, definitely good floral aromaticity, a little bit of pine resin in there, and just a wee touch of spice, which isn't surprising when you consider what hops are in. Just remember, when it comes to these sort of things, it all depends on when during the boil these hops have been added. If they've been added in the early stage, you're going to get more of the kind of bitter, you know, spicy, floral, resinous kind of note out of them. If you add them later in the boil, you're going to get the more fruity and aroma type components out of the hops. And yeah, this one does smell as if it has had a wee bit of, pardon me, quite a little bit of early edition hop in there. But on the fruity side of things, you know, it is kind of what you'd expect. There's a good bit of passion fruit in this one for me, which is going to come from the Idaho 7, from the Strata, and from the El Dorado. You do get a little bit of that in there. You can smell a little bit of a really strong grapefruit, which I think would come from the Citra and from the Strata, to be honest. But then you also get the kind of pungent passion fruit in there, and then the softer, you do get those softer kind of tropical fruit notes as well. But when you take the beer in initially, the passion fruit, the more pungent passion fruity notes are the most prominent thing in this one. But once your nose adjusts to it, you start to get the softer notes. There is definitely mango in there, which will be the Citra. And you can smell the slightly more oily, white, green, grapey, almost gooseberry-like character of the Nelson Sauvin in there. I think the Nelson Sauvin really punches its way out of this beer quite well. But in fairness, when I look at the makeup of this one, all of the hops that are in here are quite tropical, except that one. So I mean, Nelson Sauvin is the one that's most likely to offer the oily component. So I'm not surprised at that. At the same time, the other hops I think will all go together and contribute to the tropical side of the beer, whereas the Nelson Sauvin will give you that more kind of oily component. So yeah, on the front of the nose, it's definitely more oily and gooseberry-like, white, green, grapey, and then you've got all those tropical notes in there. You will, as I say, it's mainly mango for me, but you can detect little hints of the apricots and stuff like that you're going to get from Idaho 7 and Citra and stuff like that. But yeah, strong passion fruit for me, a little bit of grapefruit in behind that, and then the more oily Nelson Sauvin kind of coming out in the front of the nose. But the aroma of this one is very, very nice. My first beer from these guys in a very long time, as I said, 2.25 years since I did a dedicated review to these guys. So I have to say, I'm just very, very curious about this one. So let's get stuck into it. This one is the Tales of Majestic Puck, a triple IPA, quite obviously a New England hazy one, from Wylam Brewery in Newcastle, in the northeast of England, originally from Wylam, close by to the city though. But let's get stuck into this one. 11% triple IPA. This is going to be a monster. Slàinte, Skull, cheers. Yeah, it's a lovely, lovely beer, that, and it is an absolute monster, as I expected. Not surprised, not surprised. This is a sipper. Although I'm glad that I'm going to share this one with my dad, to be honest. Yeah, this is a really just big, big, heavy beast. So, yeah, where to start with this one then? As the aroma kind of indicated, and as you could kind of guess from looking at the ingredients list, this beer is, you know, big and wheaty based, and you can really feel that sort of thickness of the wheat there at the back of the palate, which is very, very nice. So I mean, straight away with this beer, the middle of your palate, in the very centre, in that middle third of your tongue, you can feel a little bit of the pale malty note there, particularly on the front half of that middle third of your tongue. But yeah, the back half of that middle third of your tongue and the back third of your tongue in total, if that makes sense. But yeah, you can really feel that big, thick, wheaty character there. And it's not an overly bitey wheat, it's a really quite smooth wheat, to be honest with you, but you can feel that it's just really, really thick. As I said, this beer really reminds me, to an extent, of the Blizzard in a beer mug that I had from Tool recently. It's really, the wheatiness in this beer really has that kind of vibe to it. So it's quite a different approach, this one, to be honest with you. I like how this goes together. They describe this beer in their sort of little description as being quite chewy, and I can get that out of it, in fairness. So yeah, it's interesting that, I mean, you can go, if you're going for smoothness, you can go for the oaty side of things, or you can go for the wheaty the wheaty side of it, and yeah, it's interesting to go from contrast, because before this, earlier in the day, I was reviewing a beer from Track Brewing, which was very oat forward, whereas you come to this one and it's very wheat forward, and the feel is completely different. So I do like that, but you can feel that on that back third of your palate, the wheat just builds in pungency the more and more that you drink of this beer. It's almost like a little bit kind of aromatic, or I don't know if it's astringent, a bad word to say about it. Yeah, but you can feel the sort of just the wheat coming off the back third of the palate there. So yeah, you get a bit more bitiness out of the wheat the further you go into this beer, but it's very, very smooth. The back third of your palate in this one is very, very thick, and the wheat, as I say, kind of spreads further forward, and it just thins out gradually as you move into that sort of middle third of your tongue. But I think the other thing that comes across is that the wheat is forming the base on that back third of the palate, and it's sitting on top, whereas in the middle third of your palate it feels a bit lighter, because that's probably where the kind of pale malty and other components of the malt base are showing their head a little bit more. So this one's really interesting in quite a few regards. You're also going to notice with this beer that in the centre of your palate you get a more kind of butter candy Werther's Original type thing coming out of it as well, which is that becomes more and more apparent the more that you drink of this beer. But yeah, certainly in the middle of the palate, yeah, more of a kind of, pardon me, butter candy, Werther's Original sort of thing. But yeah, the pungency of the wheat in this beer really builds and builds the further you go into it, and you can feel that this beer, it really just gets a little bit more bitey the further that you go into it. But the middle of your palate, the middle third of your palate really sweetens out a bit, but the back third of your palate really remains very, very thick. But yeah, Werther's Original in the middle of the palate, and that kind of just sits on top of a slightly lighter wheaty base in the middle there. And then underneath that middle third of your palate, you've got maybe a little bit of Munich malt or pale malt or something like that. I think pale malt, to be honest with you, because the middle third of your palate does have just a wee bit of crispness kind of sitting underneath it. But the malt base for me is really quite straight shooting, very wheat orientated, as I said, and the bitiness of that just lingers there into the aftertaste. But it's really interesting how this beer is thick at the very back of the palate, then it just goes all the way, it just gradually thins out until you reach the border of the middle third of your palate and the front third of your tongue there. So that's a really interesting point to make about this one. Yeah, and I like that about it. This is quite a quirky beer in that from that perspective. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate there is a little bit of earthiness in there, but not too much. As you move further forward along the sides of the palate, you can feel it gradually becomes more, there's a big floral aromaticity to this one, and it comes across as quite oily. The thing that you have to look at in this beer is that some of these hops in here are cryo and T90. T90s are pellets, whereas the cryo ones in this. It's Idaho 7 and Citra, and you know, when you use cryo hops, they really give you more of an oily component, and you can feel that on the side of your palate there. You can feel that some of the kind of floral aromatic aspects of this beer are quite oily, but at the same time, on top of that, you get a wee bit more of the kind of almost slightly drier floral aromaticity to it as well. So this beer offers a really interesting contrast there. I find the green component of this beer to be quite oily compared to some of the others that I had, but you really notice that on the front half of the sides of your palate there. But round the very front curve of the tongue of the beer does have a little bit of a lighter grassy component to it, but at the same time that grassy component is just a little bit more kind of zesty and things too. So the green component of the beer is throwing up a few really interesting things as well that I've not kind of thought too much about before in other reviews. But yeah, green component for me really is quite floral and aromatic in a lot of ways, and I think if the cryo wasn't in here, this beer probably would be a lot more kind of spicy, if that makes sense. I think the oily aspect of the cryo oil in this beer is kind of just smoothing the beer up a little bit actually, and it does, in fairness, it does suit the kind of wheaty side of the beer, so we'll give it that, yeah. But yeah, of course, the focus of this beer should really be the fruity side of things. So yeah, on that front third of your tongue, you've got a massive, you know, with this one, as always, you get that big oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. And for me, the oily side of this beer is really, the fruity side of this beer is extremely oily, and it works really nicely again. So yeah, if you go towards the back of that front third of your palate, there's a hell of a lot of passion fruit in there. I mean, you've got El Dorado, you've got Citra, and you've got the Idaho 7, which are all going to contribute to that. And that passion fruit, that more resinous kind of passion fruit in there kind of lingers there. The Strata is also going to contribute to that as well. You do get a wee touch of the darker grapefruit the further you progress into the aftertaste, but it is all about the passion fruit, and it's big and oily. But as you move further forward, it does kind of dissipate a little bit. There's a kind of oily, there is a slightly mango-y note to this one. Perhaps as you move further forward, you will pick up little hints of, you know, apricot and things like that. I wouldn't go as light as papaya, to be honest with you. I think it's mainly mango, a big oily mango that's in there, but you do get hints from I think from the Idaho 7. It's going to give you a lot of these softer kind of tropical notes, but yeah, it's all about the passion fruit mainly in this beer, and then the mango. But as you reach the kind of front third of your tongue, like the front ninth or something, you do get the more oily aspects of the Nelson Sauvin. And as I said earlier, the Nelson Sauvin, I think, is going to be the one that's going to give you the more oily, fruity component in the beer. And I think, yeah, on that front edge of the tongue, almost on that front third of your palate, the front ninth of your tongue, if we're going that route, that's the Nelson Sauvin. I mean, you get a sort of gooseberry type note out of this one, and the further you go into the aftertaste, you will detect more and more of that sort of white, green, grapey kind of thing. So yeah, I do like how it goes together in that sense as well. This beer has some really interesting fruity aspects to it, but it's a big oily beast, to be quite honest with you. So yeah, the Citra probably will contribute a little bit to the kind of gooseberry, green, grapey sort of thing that the beer has. But yeah, I think it's very passion fruit orientated, very mango orientated, and I think maybe to a degree you could argue that there's maybe a few kind of too many hops in this, to be honest with you, that you don't kind of appreciate all of them individually. But in fairness, you know, Citra, Idaho 7, El Dorado and Strata, they are all going to contribute a passion fruit element and then little complexities, and they work together, don't get me wrong on that, but maybe a little simpler might have, you know, hacked into things. So maybe Strata and Nelson Sauvin together could have been quite a unique thing, or El Dorado and Nelson Sauvin could have been quite unique. But yeah, I think that the fruitiness, there's maybe so many kind of fruity components here that it just all kind of goes together and leans towards the passion fruit side of things rather than highlighting the individual kind of nuances of each hop, I guess you could say. But it's a lovely beer. On the fruity side of things, it is very nice, and that stronger passion fruity note that it has does suit the thicker wheat and the more oily floral aromaticity that you have out of this one. So the three main components of the flavour: big passion fruity note for me, big kind of wheaty presence, and also a more oily floral aromatic green component. I think that sums up the flavour profile of this beer quite nicely, to be honest. So yeah, let's leave it at that for the taste section of this video, and let's focus on the mouthfeel. So yeah, I think this is pretty much, without doubt, this is a full-bodied beer. Carbonation is very, very smooth in this one. It really leans towards the oily side of things, but in fairness, it really has a real kind of thickness to it. It's got a big, I don't know if I would call it creaminess, but you can feel the thickness of this beer to the wheat. I mean, oats feel creamy, wheat doesn't. Wheat just feels very, very thick, and is turbid a good way to describe it? Yeah, it really is quite just a very, very thick feeling beer, this one. Yeah, so nice big kind of oily quality to it, like I said, and yeah, it's really nicely done. It gives you a really different kind of perspective on the triple IPA, but this is a very wheat orientated one. I think it maybe needs just a little touch more. Maybe needs a little touch of oats to it, just to kind of round it off a little bit. But it's interesting, as I say, to have a wheat orientated triple IPA. You're not going to find too many of these, to be honest with you. So yeah, very, very thick, malty leaning beer, this one, absolutely. But when it comes to the hoppy bitterness, what would we say about that? Yeah, this one, I think it's maybe around 50 IBUs, maybe 60 at a push, and I think that suits a triple IPA. You do need a little bit of bitterness there when you've got such a big malty presence. I think about 50 or 60 IBUs to this beer. The malt base, like I said, is very, very kind of thick and very smooth. You do get a wee degree of sweetness to it from those kind of Werther's original flavours that I was talking about, but it does dry out the further you go into the aftertaste, and then it's got a big oily kind of fruity sort of component to it as well. But yeah, really, really interesting beer, this one, and I'm glad I was able to review it for you. I love the kind of it's a big passion fruity thing, this one, so you've got a lot of pungent tropical fruit esters coming out of this one, and just a wee touch in Nelson Sauvin. That'll come out more and more the further you go into the aftertaste. But yeah, really, really quirky beer, this one, quite different to the other Wylam beers that I've had before. But I do remember Wylam, in fairness, being quite a wheat orientated brewery now that I try it again. So yeah, this is a lovely beer, and if you get the chance to try it, I think you will enjoy this one. It's very highly rated, and I can see exactly why that is. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This one was the Tales of Majestic Puck, a very wheat, passion fruit, and you know, oily, floral aromatic orientated New England triple IPA, this one. So big thumbs up to the guys at Wylam. Hopefully I can review another beer from these guys quite soon. I want to do another dedicated review to these guys fairly soon, not in 2 years time, absolutely not, because these guys are a very, very good brewery, and I've had some really good experiences with them in the past. So yeah, but yeah, thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Wylam Brewery. I'm sure we'll return to these guys at some point soon, but in the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this one. Check out my social media, check out Wylam Brewery, and I will catch you guys in the next review. The Tales of Majestic Puck, New England triple IPA at 11% ABV, quite wheat, passion fruit, and big oily and green floral aromaticity orientated, I guess we could say. Till the next time, slange it just now, and I'll catch you guys later. Slange it, skull, cheers. Do make sure you check out Wylam Brewery from Newcastle in England. Cheers.